My name is Mackker, and today I'm going to tell you how Jesus has impacted my gender journey. At this point in my life, it would be pointless to tell my transgender story without mentioning my faith. And it would be equally as pointless to try to tell my Christian testimony without talking about my gender, because they're intertwined. It hasn't always been that way, though. My gender and faith are like a forked path, two timelines that eventually converge into one. For the purpose of this story, I'm going to focus on the gender part. So, for context, from age 3 all the way to 18, my home was a lovely suburban school culture, which I will refer to as the community, which makes it sound like a cult, even though it wasn't, mostly. The community was basically a conservative Christian cishet echo chamber, that meaning like cisgender and heterosexual. There was little to no communication with outsiders, especially if you were a minor. And in the community, everybody's beliefs were very similar. Everyone's politics were the same, everyone's religion was the same, and nobody really knew about life outside of the community. We kind of thought everyone was like this, except for the bad people, of course. That image of the community sets the stage and the foundation for everything else that is to come. This story begins when I was in kindergarten. At this point in my life, I wasn't really making friends, because at the age of 5, I was a 100% introverted autistic baby according to the 16 Personalities website. But nobody knew that yet. So I had 3 friends. 3 5-year-old boys and me. We did everything together. Art, dance, games, gunsmithing with Legos, very normal, conservative American 5-year-old activities. I didn't get in trouble very much in school, but I think one of my most heinous crimes was trying to make toy guns every time we got access to Legos. At this point in life, gender didn't really matter. I don't know if the other kids ever saw me as different for being a girl, but if they did, I never would have known. They treated me just like one of them, and I did feel like one of them.
Gender isn't real.
No, I think you have some very strange misconceptions about, publicly perceived notions of masculinity and femininity. That, or maybe you're just trying to be woke or something.
In first grade, we got to have access to recess time. I don't remember how or when it started, but as far back as I can remember, I played soccer with the boys while the girls went to play on the playground. I did this almost every day for 5 years. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that for 5 years, I was the only girl on both teams. I was the last pick because I was a girl, because 4th grade really was experiencing sexism at its finest. After years of low-key harassing the team captain to give me the goalie position, I remember he gave a dramatic sigh and let me play. I still remember how excited I felt, and suddenly the pressure hit me. I couldn't let them down. I had to show them that girls could play soccer too. So when my chance came, I slid across the ground to block a shot at the goal. Not only did I fail to block the shot, but the field was not turf. It was actually a basketball court, so I completely skinned off a side of my arm. Mind you, I was a child, so every childish instinct in me wanted to break down crying in pain, but I couldn't do that. I had to show them that girls could be tough too. In my home life, I played a lot of video games. I loved role-play games, especially ones that allowed avatar choices or character customization. And of course, I always picked the most masculine one possible to represent myself. One time, I remember my brother asking me why I always chose to be a boy in video games, and I simply replied, I like it better. That was about how much thought I put into it at the time. every few days or so, I would go back to the girls' side of the playground and catch up with my female friends. One time we were playing a truth or dare style game where the question was, if you could have one wish for anything, what would it be? And without any hesitation whatsoever, I said, I wish I was a boy. And it was in this exact moment that I learned social pressure, because all the girls looked at me with weird looks. I saw surprise, confusion, judgment, even irritation. One of them said to me later that day, I don't think you should be a boy. I racked my brain all day long trying to figure out what was so bad about what I had said. I thought I had a novel idea, honestly. Who wouldn't want to be a boy? Most 10-year-old girls, apparently. I never understood why wanting to be a boy was perceived as bad or even abnormal, but it didn't matter. I never brought it up to them again.
So great!
I can't fucking understand you.
I mean, I didn't love puberty, but I've never met anyone who does, so it's definitely not one of the reasons I am trans at all. The reason it is relevant, though, is because it solidified in my mind that I had to be a girl from then on. No more soccer with the guys, no more avoiding the feminine fashion I'd been subconsciously dreading, or at least not without eyebrow raises or critiques. I had to live out the social expectation now. And while that was disappointing, I figured it had to be part of God's will, so onward I went.
Fly, I'm the last one to die.
Upon entering 6th grade, I realized that my best friend Michael was leaving the community. I don't know why, and I never saw him again. That same year, my parents divorced, and my brother and I weren't getting along very well. A year later, I entered middle school. So there was a lot going on. There was so much going on that the idea of self, like thinking about myself, got pushed entirely off to the side. I thought I had to be happy, so I was. I heard the classic Christian advice, praying will make you feel better, and it actually did. I've heard a lot of stories of Christians that get depressed as teenagers and then they feel like God doesn't love them because they're complaining, which means they're ungrateful, which means that they're sinning and God doesn't like that and blah 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 blah. Well, I had a slightly different problem. Kind of the exact opposite problem. I was freaking stuck up. I was happier than everyone, and I thought that made me better than everyone. One of my closest friends in middle and high school had a lot of signs of depression and anxiety, and I had no idea what to do with her. Evangelism didn't solve it. The idea of prayer not being an immediate fix was new and strange to me. So naturally, I thought she must not be trying hard enough. Around the same time, I was introduced to the concept of homosexuality via movies and TV shows, which we watched with my father. I remember my father seeing these representations as, and I quote, completely unnecessary and distracting. If ever exposed to the idea of a transgender person, whether real or fiction, my father remarked that seeing a person pursue transition was a very sad and tragic thing, but there was no one in my life defending homosexuality, so I had no reason to see anything good about it. It made a lot of sense to me. If things were supposed to be that way, why were there never scenes in the Bible depicting a wholesome, happy gay couple? And why were there no recorded instances in history of God saying,
Oh hey, just to clear up confusion, being gay is fun. That was all just a huge misunderstanding.
Besides, I told myself, I'm not like them at all. I am very straight. At the time, I was experiencing my first and only real crush, and it was on a boy. I was so in love with him and so bold that I asked him out on a date. Our relationship never evolved beyond friendship, but even so, we remained good friends until he left the community later that year. So what if I'm a little assertive, a little masculine? I'm a girl who likes boys. From that point until 11th grade, I lived as a totally normal girl. Well, besides the autism, that wasn't really normal. Actually, oddly enough, I have a lot of the stereotypical male autistic traits that doctors tend to look for, but I was never assessed, so. Anyway, I had short hair, but not like this short, not like boy short, it was like here short. I wore a lot of t-shirts and jeans and generally gender neutral stuff, but it was always from the girls section of the store, so it was okay. All of my friends were girls because boys got to the age where they think that girls have cooties and didn't want to be around them anymore for some weird reason. And guess what? I was fine with it. Around this time, I was introduced to a new kind of video game, that being Fire Emblem. This was the first game I ever played which had an element of romance in it. I remember my friend helping me set up the game when the opening screen prompted me to choose a male or female avatar. I almost clicked on the male one instinctively, but then I said, wait, if I pick the boy, is it gonna let me marry a boy? And she said no, which caused me to feel the need to choose between my gender and my romantic orientation. Because what I didn't know at the time was that I was a gay man. So I had to choose, would I rather be a girl or date one? Which even saying that out loud makes me really uncomfy because I really didn't want to do either. I ended up choosing the female avatar, of course, because by my logic, I'm already a girl in real life. Whereas I'm not actually attracted to women, so I guess that makes the most sense. And sure, I wasn't living my best soccer boy life, but honestly, even if I were a cis boy, I probably wouldn't have continued playing soccer, so that didn't really matter. People calling me she was totally normal and didn't make me feel bad. Wearing dresses was pretty uncomfortable, but that had always been uncomfortable for me just for sensory reasons also. So, with the community telling me that I was a girl, and with me believing it, and not having a problem with it, what could have possibly caused my egg to crack? One facet of my life that I haven't mentioned until now is that as a teenager, I struggled with pulling out my hair. So when I was 16, I was so desperate to stop that I decided the only way I could was to cut off my hair entirely. So I went and had it done. At first, no one liked the new look except me. The night it was cut, I spent more time than I ever have looking into mirrors. And I was thrilled. I couldn't stop saying around the house, I'm so glad I got my hair cut. When I came into school the next day, my friends said they liked it, but I don't think they really did. It became the butt of many jokes, including the onslaught of offensive lesbian jokes, because being a lesbian was a bad thing. But my mom said to me, I've never seen you smile so much in a mirror. Now remember, I cut it because I was struggling with pulling out my hair. The haircut was not at all because I wanted to look like a boy. The haircut was, to my shock, what made me realize how much I loved looking like a boy. A few times over the course of the following months, I passed as a boy. And passing is a term to say that a person is seen and treated as if they are a certain gender. This almost exclusively happened when I was wearing a hat to hide my hair. Excuse me, I just burped. So it looks like I had a crew cut. And guess what? Being called sir made me uncomfortable. Because I thought, that's not right. I'm not a boy. So I was too shy to correct anyone, so I just let people call me whatever they wanted. And it only ever came up a few times anyway. Meanwhile, I looked into mirrors, and for the first time, I actually felt a tiny bit connected to my reflection. You may think it's strange that I didn't see that disconnect as a problem up until then, but you have to remember I had no point of reference. I didn't know, like, what I was missing. I didn't know that a connection to my body was a good thing or even something that other people experience. And furthermore, I saw the disconnect as a sign of my devoutness. The flesh is sinful anyway. Why would I even want to connect to it? So when I turned 17, my online friend, who was only a few years older than me, came out as non-binary and changed their pronouns to they, them. I had never heard of this before, so naturally I went to Wikipedia because I wanted to understand what it meant. And I thought without a moment's hesitation in my mind, well, that's me. I don't know how I knew that with such certainty so early on, but I just understood the definition immediately. I've always had weird, unknown feelings about my gender, and I was like, is that what being trans means? It's not just a group of rebellious kids who hate Jesus and wanna, like, I don't know, take over the world or something. It's just not being in the binary. That's it? If so, maybe I should look into this. So I did. I looked into it over the Christmas of 2023, and I came back in 2024 absolutely terrified because I thought I might be non-binary. I might be a they. That's a joke. My days of being the happy, obedient child were instantly over, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt like I had a dangerous secret to keep from my family and my friends. I was filled with an onslaught of negative emotions, terror, shame, confusion. I started recalling and reflecting deeply on things I hadn't thought about in years. That truth or dare question, all the soccer games, even my friendship with Michael, which felt so much like a boy-to-boy friendship in a way that I can't explain. I thought, maybe I'm not meant to be a girl. Maybe I'm meant to be a boy. And as soon as I thought that, I thought, I'm finally losing my mind. I genuinely had no desire to change my body, so I started Google searching things like, is it possible to be trans without changing your body? Or do you need surgery to be trans? And I couldn't find a definitive yes or no answer anywhere. Nobody said you have to, but it seemed like everyone in the world wanted to. And I thought, well, I don't want that. I don't fit into that mold. Too much money, too much hassle, too much social rejection that I'm not capable of receiving. Plus, I had no idea where God fit into all of that, changing your body. God is not known for being a huge fan of that, at least from where I come from. So I thought, for all those reasons, the most important being I didn't want it, I thought that's not worth it. I only ever told one person about this, and it was after about 2 days of questioning, and I decided I'm just cis. Because I was like, I still knew I could be masculine. Like, I wasn't trying to like hyper feminize or whatever. Like, I was never hyper feminized ever in my entire life. I still knew I could be masculine as a woman, and I was that for a very long time. But after those 2 days of questioning, I decided to be cis, as I put it. I did tell one person that I was questioning, and that person never told anyone as far as I know. And so my secret was buried, I thought, forever. In 2024, I spent the majority of the summer in Florida training for my private pilot's license. Shortly after returning home in August, I got my first job, and when school started, I had to start thinking about graduation, college, and my career, juggling all of that with my senior year classwork. For the first time in my life, I was truly thinking about the future, and also for the first time I was thinking, what kind of adult do I want to be? Naturally, I put a lot of prayer into all of these things, but coming up with the answer was difficult. As 2024 came to a close, little things started happening that I couldn't stop thinking about. I would make a new account for a college website or something, and they would ask for my pronouns. That question had never been presented to me before. I found myself hesitating. I vaguely remember crying in my bed after staying up the night of New Year's Eve because 2025 was here. 2025 was the year I would leave my community that I so dearly loved, and it was the year I would get a diploma that would send me straight into womanhood. And that upsetted me deeply. I didn't want to graduate high school. I didn't want to leave the ambiguity of my identity. Somehow I had a feeling that if the Lord truly searched my heart and my true identity was revealed, I would be terrified. What I consider to be my official egg crack moment occurred on the evening of January 15th, 2025. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was watching some YouTube before bed per usual, and I got an ad for a webtoon involving two men in a romance. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It was one of those 10-second cringy webtoon ads. And I've never even liked romances anyway. I thought I was aromantic until I was 18. That's an entirely different story. But when I saw it, my gut reaction was a thought. And the thought was, I wish I could be one of those guys. Of course, what I didn't have the capacity to realize yet was that I was a gay man, and I was relating to the fictional gay men I was seeing in media. But all I knew of myself at the time was that I was either heterosexual or aro-ace. So I completely freaked out, and the thought literally kept me up that night. And for several of the nights after, probably. I thought, why on earth would I, a aro-ace woman, want to be in a gay male relationship?
Why? Why
was I feeling this way? And I just kept thinking, what is wrong with my brain that this is happening to me? So for the second time, I had to say to myself, I think I'm trans. But this time there was a new development. I was thinking about my career, my future, my adult life, and I found it extremely difficult, in fact, nearly impossible, to envision myself in the future as a woman. But at the same time, I didn't want to let go of my community and my womanhood in that community, of being, that almost like a feminist, like this strong, masculine woman that was different from all the rest. I had embraced that identity for so long, and I had to grieve that for a little tiny bit. I was undecided for a long time in the beginning of 2025. The indecision about my gender went on for days before I did anything about it. And that may not sound like a lot, but I spent most of this time actually depressed. Like, I'd never been actually depressed before. Like, I'd lay on the couch and stare at the ceiling for just hours, thinking and never doing anything. I couldn't draw, I couldn't write, I couldn't play my video games. Eating and going to work was a struggle sometimes. Going to school, the community, was my only comfort, was my only relief. But even then, it all became too much. So one day I just woke up and I told myself, I have to try. For a few days or however long you need, treat yourself exactly as you would if you were non-binary. See what happens. See if you feel a disconnect from God. See if you're happier. See if anyone notices anything. And remember, self, this is just an experiment. You can always change your mind like you did before. Just an experiment. So I did the experiment. Putting my foot down and pushing myself to experiment made all the difference in the whole world. I saw the world around me differently. I saw myself differently. The shift was immediate, like overnight, and dramatic. I felt so new. I don't know how to describe that, but I just felt like a new person, even though it was literally overnight and nothing had actually changed yet. And I felt like I mattered. So much so that I wanted to take care of my body. Like, my body mattered. I was showering, brushing my teeth, cleaning my clothes, which were all things that I was not doing routinely in the past. There were things I'd always neglected, using the excuse that the flesh is sinful anyway, so who cares if I don't take care of it? Then I started reading the Bible again after a little bit of a hiatus, and I understood verses I never had before. Like, honor God with your body. I genuinely never understood that before, despite it being explained to me through lectures 1,000 times. I was like, but, why? Why?
Why? Why? Why? Why?
Why honor God with your body if it's so useless? Why does it matter? Just like a light switch, like a serious light bulb moment, I just like understood that the body is not created to be garbage. It belongs to someone. It belongs to God. There's a reason the body is called the temple of the Holy Spirit. It's because it is, literally, like in a way I did not understand before this. And because of that new understanding and knowledge, all of a sudden I was so motivated to take care of my body. So not only do I get it now, but I actually wanted to do it. So within a week of my egg crack, 2 completely unexpected things happened. 1, I liked it. And 2, I felt like I had a better understanding of God and of scriptures, even ones I was really familiar with already. And that second point haunted me for the next 3 months. Wrestling with my gender, bringing me closer to God, was the exact opposite of what I was expecting. It was the exact opposite of what was supposed to happen. And not to mention, it was against everything I knew. This wasn't supposed to happen. I thought I must be misunderstanding or clinically insane. So I called one of my friends to basically vent all of this brain vomit. I told her I've been wrestling with my gender identity, and I think I'm non-binary. They, them. We had a lengthy conversation about like what I meant by all of that and what I thought the Bible was saying to me about this. I spoke a lot about my body and my new motivation to take care of it and why all of that was important. I told her I don't think God would be against me pursuing a social transition, and that medical transition was not something on my radar. I wasn't even thinking about it. She was very upsetted by this. I'm not going to go too deep into it because this is obviously very personal, but I do want to be honest. Obviously, I'm telling my testimony, so I have to be personal a little bit. Basically, in summary, she told me I was wrong, definitively wrong, and I was defying God. I was destroying his creation. That is my woman self, and that I was defying God's will that's set up in Genesis, that he created them male and female. That's what Genesis says. She promised she would still be my friend no matter what, but she did say very, very clearly, if I chose to go forward with this, I cannot be a Christian anymore. I didn't agree with her, but even so, it struck fear into me, because the idea of other Christians not seeing me as a Christian was something I'd never even considered, so like, new fear unlocked. I've spent the entirety of February depressed and scared. I started taking tiny steps toward the social transition I wanted as part of my gender experiment. I changed my pronouns online to they, them. Only in non-Christian servers though, which there weren't a lot of. Even in these early stages, using the term non-binary just didn't sit right for myself, so instead I identified as genderqueer. I guess because I saw it as an easy way to say, I'm pretty sure I'm non-binary, but I'm not 100% sure, and all I know is that I have something weird going on with my gender. So, in hindsight, I can see that the pronouns they, them were not satisfying to me long term. They were merely a description of how I was feeling at the time. My gender felt very uncertain and ambiguous, even like chaotic. So the neutral pronouns were my way of expressing those feelings. Meanwhile, I started digging into the Bible again. I was reading it and praying more than ever before on my own time. I read through entire books of the Bible, including Psalms, Proverbs, Ephesians, and Job. I searched for any sign of God's disapproval of my idea, and I kept getting more and more scared when I couldn't find any other than my one friend telling me. I studied Jesus's ideas, his morals, and his behavior, and as far as I could see, in Jesus's entire life on earth, there was only one group of people that he called out as completely wrong and unwelcome in his group of followers. Really, I don't think Jesus would turn away a single person on this planet that has ever lived, ever, but in general, there was one group of people that he pointed out the most as being not good, I guess. And it was not anyone who you would expect. Not even the corrupt rulers of the Roman Empire at the time. The worst people of Jesus' day, according to him, were the leaders of his own church where he grew up. And that's not to say that all church leaders today are completely evil and horrible. But the point is that church people and not church people is not even a moral distinction that Jesus ever made. I believe that's because the point of human life is unconditional love and kindness and having relationships with one another. Most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins. I don't have that memorized. I'm reading it. That's 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. I also noticed that Christ does not make divisions, and certainly not for gender, social status, or anything that is a social construct, basically. The Lord only judges one thing: the heart, the human soul. If your heart belongs to the Lord, he says there is nothing that can steal you away from him. And I knew my heart was the Lord's. I don't even know how to explain what that means in less than a long paragraph, but I just knew with certainty. I knew my heart was the Lord's, and I knew I loved him more than anything, and I knew that my body belonged to him. He created every part of me, and he loves every part of me. Every part of you includes your mind. That includes your brain and your mental health. And to take it a step further, because of what I mentioned earlier about my body, I believed that a social transition, if not other types of transition as well, would create and deepen the connections between myself, my body, and the creator of my body. With all this in mind, I decided to search for an online community of LGBTQ Christians to ask for their perspective on these ideas. I didn't really believe they existed, but I thought I might as well find out. In my search, I came across a Discord server with a few hundred members for Christians who are LGBTQ+ or allies. The existence of such a group was astounding, so I joined the group out of sheer curiosity. I was frightened by them at first, I'm not gonna lie. They did all kinds of things that I thought were taboo across all denominations. There were people who were homosexual, transgender, polyamorous, drag queens, genders and sexualities I'd literally never even heard of. It was overwhelming and frightening. There were so many terms and concepts that I didn't understand. But then I began to notice something. They all believed that Jesus was the Messiah, the Son of God. They all believed in the Trinity. They all prayed together. They did Bible studies together. They worshiped together. And probably most impactful of all, they were just so kind to me. Even when I dared to express my doubts or ask questions about their whole culture, every single one of them is like, that's okay. We're all just different parts of the body of Christ. And hey, here are some resources that helped me when I was in your place. So after a while, I realized that they weren't just fake Christians and that they were real Christians. They didn't let their appearance or their practices stop them from loving God. They could do both. They could let God rule over their lives. I didn't know that was possible. For the first time, I thought, maybe I can do that too. Maybe God will help me. About a month later, in March, I saw a clip of a person who was seeing their top surgery results for the first time. It's a trans mask person. I have no idea who they were to this day. And I had never seen top surgery results before. And I didn't know they could be good. Like, I was under the very common transphobic impression that hormones and surgeries don't work. They never end up looking good, and they're just like really bad band-aids, basically. But I saw in this clip, this person was so happy with their results that they started crying in joy.
It's incredible, really.
And even though I don't struggle with that specific dysphoria as much, I started crying when I saw the video because I understood them completely. I understood this is a man or non-binary person, I don't know, but I'm gonna assume this is a man seeing himself as a man for the very first time. That's something that I kind of long for, I guess. So I sat there and cried for like hours on end, praying. I asked God why he made something wrong with me. Because I didn't and I still don't believe that God makes mistakes or that anything is outside of his control. So I thought he must have intentionally done this to me, basically. And I was just like, why?
Why? Why?
Why would he do that? Around this time, I thought perhaps I was bi-gender, and I put he, they as my pronouns online. But after seeing more successfully transitioned men on YouTube, like Jamie Rains, for example, I finally began to grasp what I understand now to be my true identity all along. That I'm just a man, regardless of what I look like or of what other people think of me. Even though I felt fairly certain about my identity, it started to hit me how this would destroy my relationships with everyone I knew. I became terrified of the social repercussions. A few days later, I felt so awful about myself that in a meltdown, I called my mom and I asked her to come home right away because something was very wrong. She came immediately and I burst into tears and I told her I just felt so confused about my gender and about God and I didn't know what to do about any of it. And all she said was that she wanted me to find comfort in the fact that I got it off my chest and that I can come to her with anything. So then I retreated to Discord and I basically vented about all of this that had happened. And everyone was just so, like, comforting and kind to me. Like, I seriously did not deserve their kindness for just complaining so much. But They gave me Bible verses to reference about family and peace and, like, cast all your cares on him, that kind of thing. Then a trans woman from the server contacted me and told me that, quote, transitioning will undoubtedly grow your faith. Speaking from her own experience, I replied that I'd already begun to feel that spiritual growth. At the end of March, I spent 5 hours explaining my new feelings to my mom. I basically spent all of that time saying, to summarize, I wanted to be a man. She was unsupportive of the concept, but still very kind to me and open about her feelings and about accepting my feelings. She trusts my judgment concerning prayer, which was a huge encouragement to me. That night, I once again started feeling the anxiety of the social pressure, and I had another meltdown. And that night, I remember being on the couch. I'll never forget it. I was crying, and then I felt something. I felt God put his arms around me like this. And then I heard very clearly, I mean, I didn't hear it like a voice in the room, but I heard, like, in my mind, I guess. I heard God's voice saying, or some supernatural voice saying, you're okay because I'm with you. And I did write a script for this video, and I didn't put this in the script, but I just remembered that the only other time I've heard God speak was actually, he said the same exact thing, and it was on the night that I consider to be the night when I gave my life to Christ. That was when I knew with near certainty that God created me to be a trans man. That was my affirmation. Immediately after feeling that overwhelming love and support from God, I decided that if by some strange, crazy turn of events, I found out somehow or felt in my heart that God wanted me to detransition one day, I promised I would do that. In April, my egg had officially cracked 3 months earlier, and I had spent almost all of it in isolation. The only people who even knew about all of this were my friend and my mom, and neither of them were even trying to affirm my gender in any way. I was certain no one in the community would accept me. No one was allowed to be gay or trans. I'd already gotten enough looks from students just for cutting my hair. I was hopeless. Until my senior high school musical.
It's always theater that brings people out of the closet, isn't it?
I had never really been into theater. I did not do theater for the vast majority of my life, but all of my friends were into it, and I really enjoyed spending that time socializing with them, so I did it. My closest friends were all leads, but I was always in the ensemble. It was in the ensemble that I made 2 new friends, and I'll call them Anna and Riley. They're both a few years younger than me. Now, I will say, for the parts where I talk about other people's personal information, I am gonna slightly change, like, some details just because I don't want to, like, dox or out my friends. In the community, music was seen as a very feminine thing, and I bet a lot of boys avoided it because they didn't want to be called gay, because I can confirm any boys who did theater were called gay. So there was always a horrendous imbalance of male and female actors. Just like, yes. Let's say there were 35 people in our cast. What do you think is the ratio of female to male actors? You're wrong. Let me tell you. I believe my senior year there were 30 girls and 5 boys. There were always girls who had to play male parts. So at the beginning of each theater season, we had to go through the dreaded process of deciding which girls would take on the embarrassment of essentially cross-dressing in front of a hyper cishet audience. The entire female cast was put into the middle of the room, and the director would say, "Anyone who's willing to play a boy, go to the left. Anyone who's not willing to play a boy, go to the right side." And every single person always went to the right side. Except this year. I wanted to volunteer so badly, but I was literally terrified. I was terrified of being teased, of the truth being suspected, and if I spiraled, I feared actual punishment. But before I could decide whether to embarrass myself or not, 2 girls stepped up and volunteered. And of course, it was Anna and Riley. Bet you didn't see that coming. They both laughed as they went over to the right side, no doubt aware of how silly they looked. But the moment they went ahead, I followed them. I just didn't want to be the first. We were the only volunteers. Other girls ended up joining us, but it was only after a tournament of rock, paper, scissors where the losers would have to come over to our side. Later in the season, it was time for costumes. The male ensemble costumes were these fancy silver, dress suits, including knee-high socks and hats with colorful feathers. The girls in female roles laughed at us, and the girls in male roles were horrified. And not even, in a funny way. A few of them were so distressed about wearing these costumes that their entire attitude was different for the rest of the season. Noticeably. They were just grumpy. I swear, I'm not making this up. It was noticeable. I decided to be a little bolder than usual, and I said, "I don't know what they're talking about. I like this." And when I said it, Riley responded, "I kind of like it too." When we tried our costumes on, Riley laughed and said that we look so gay. I didn't really think it was funny. And I didn't understand why she would think that was funny. Until a moment later, her tone and her face kind of changed. And she said, "Do you know what she is?" Pointing to Anna. My heart was literally pounding. My mind went blank. I was speechless. So after a horrible silence, Riley answered for me and said, "They wouldn't mind if I told you," with an emphasis on they. My mind was racing with anxieties. I literally felt like a spy, in enemy territory. I felt like I was being told information I was never supposed to know. I wondered if anyone else was listening on us. I wondered why she would tell me this. I wondered why she trusted me with this. Didn't she think I would tease Anna or bully them or, God forbid, tell someone? Out them to someone? Didn't she think I would confront them and tell them they can't be part of this community anymore? I was like, do you have no shame? So that day, I asked for both of their phone numbers, and that night, the 3 of us had a conversation over text. Anna reintroduced itself. It said their name was Ollie, they were non-binary, and their pronouns were it, they. It said it was pansexual, which they explained meant they can be attracted to anyone regardless of their gender. Then Riley introduced himself as Aiden, whose pronouns were he, she, they, who was still exploring whether he was transmasculine, a lesbian, or somewhere in between. I will refer to him as he from now on because as I am writing this, he identifies as a he-him transgender man, like me. I couldn't bring myself to shower them with support immediately because I was literally in shock. I repeated over and over again to them how I couldn't believe they were serious and I never ever expected this to happen. And I interrogated them, but not about gender, more about their social circumstances. I was like, "Do you have any anxiety about being outed? Does anyone else know? Have you been bullied? And also, how do you expect to, like, survive in this world? Their answer was that being firm in their identities was worth any of the backlash. Then Aiden asked me what I identified as. Absolutely terrified out of my mind, I said, I don't know. And they laughed and said stuff like,
That's so real, me too, that's so relatable.
and then they started talking about things I had never heard discussed aloud. They talked about chest binding. They talked about hoping for the opportunity for surgery. Talking so casually about all this stuff was overwhelming, even to me, who had been consuming all of this research information for the last few months. I didn't fully come out to them until a few days later, and I said, my name is still Mackenzie. If you want, you can call me Mac. I think I'm a gay trans man, and I'm trying to use he, him pronouns, but I'm still not sure about that. I was like super loosey-goosey about it. I was like, I don't know, I'm just... Ignore me, please. Please. Thank you. And Aiden responded, I can totally do that, whatever makes you most comfortable. A month later, I graduated high school. In early July, I met my very first ally. My ally was my IRL friend, who I will call Cook. Cook was a comic book artist and uploading her works to her social media very often. I was admiring her work when I found a public comment section where Cook said that she was a lesbian. I couldn't tell if she was joking or not, so immediately I screenshotted her comment and texted it to her. And I said, sorry for the blunt question, but is this a joke or not? And I did say, just so you know, I'm not homophobic. You are safe with me. She responded immediately, like, oops, I didn't know you could see that. And she then said that she believed she was a lesbian, but she was still unsure. And immediately she tried to defend herself with faith, and she was like, I prayed about this, and I feel since my self-discovery, I'm a more loving and Christ-like person. And I don't know why I'm saying that in a voice as if I'm making fun of her. That's my girl voice, I guess. I don't know. I told her, don't worry, you're good with me. And then I complimented her art. And then a few minutes later, I said, hey, so guess what? I'm a queer Christian too. Once again, she was shocked, reasonably so, and was like, wait, really? What do you identify as? And I said, for the first time in my life with confidence and certainty, I am a gay trans man. She responded, wow, I'm so glad you could come to terms with that. I know we're not the same, but still coming out to yourself is super duper hard. Then I saw an opportunity to give to her what Ollie and Aiden had given to me. So I said, do you know about the other community folks? She said, what? Am I allowed to know who they are? And I know I've been saying shocked and surprised literally over and over again, but I don't know how else to emphasize just how groundbreaking this was to everyone in the community, not just me. This kind of stuff was unheard of, unspoken of, much less being discussed among groups of people. Hence why she asked if she was allowed to know who these people were. I assume she was legitimately concerned for the privacy or safety of the queer people in the community. I knew Ollie and Aiden wouldn't mind, so I told Cook about them, referring to them as the names she would know, and then saying their new names and pronouns. I offered to let her join the group chat we'd made, and as soon as she joined, it became clear that she was holding back in the DMs with me because she didn't know if she could trust me yet, and I don't blame her for a single second. But once she knew we were for real, she opened up and was talking much more casually and clearly about her being a lesbian. She's a lesbian, yeah. She no longer felt the need to hide, which was really cool to see. Later in the month, it came time for the annual Mission Camp. This is an annual event for Christians all around the world to come together and discuss their mission work over the past year. It is literally known for being open to any age, gender, denomination, culture, language, pretty much anything. I can confidently say it is one of the most culturally diverse places in the world, and the place where I have felt the closest to glimpsing an angel or heaven itself. Just to give you an idea of the level of diversity I'm talking about, one time I was at like this fair kind of thing and I saw a booth for a pro-life something, and then like literally the next day I was at a worship service and I saw a family of people wearing matching shirts that was like the Progress Pride flag in a heart. Because of instances like seeing the family with the rainbow flags at worship, I had a feeling MC would accept me if I chose to come out. I desperately wanted to. The hiding and being in secret is genuinely more painful than being openly rejected. The hiding is so painful, I can't stand it. Fortunately, I had a very convenient way to go about this. One of the MC leaders at the time was my church pastor. So I came out to her over text. I said, "Hey, I'm trans. My pronouns are he, him. This is my name, and I would like to be referred to this way at MC." Very similarly to my mother, the pastor said that she trusts my judgment, trusting that I prayed to God and this is the answer I got. But unlike my mom, she went above and beyond my expectations. She offered to change my name tag herself, and she put me in a small group where she knew I would have allies. Long story short, this is exactly what happened. For the first time, I felt comfortable enough to write he, him on a blank sticker and put it on my name tag next to my name, and I wore it all week long. All of that was the easy part. I knew there would be a harder part. A few harder parts, actually. For one, I had friends at MC who I only saw once a year, who had known me as a girl for the past several years. And for another, my brother was at MC with me, and he was still referring to me as his sister. So I knew this transition was not going to be seamless, but it isn't supposed to be. And I know that, and I knew that then. And between my small group and my new name tag, I was already more than grateful for everything going my way so far. Now, there was one person at MC who I had grown very close to, and we'll call her Faye. Faye and her family were refugees from Ukraine. We had been at MC for the exact same number of years. Our first year together was the first summer after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. She openly spoke about her time in Ukraine during the invasion and expressed a deep sadness for family and friends she had lost. Despite that, she was always talking about Jesus. She spoke about his peace and generosity to allow them safe passage into the United States and then to MC, a beautiful safe haven for Christians to rest from the ugliness of the world. The story is incredible, but if you haven't caught on, she doesn't exactly seem like the kind of person that'd be waving a rainbow flag, especially since she had spent most of her living memory in Russia, of all places. And when she heard from someone else that I was changing my pronouns, she came to me and asked if we could have a conversation over lunch. I didn't feel like my odds were very good. I'd already had a good friend tell me I didn't belong in a holy place like this anymore, and I didn't want to hear that again, especially from someone I looked up to. So we sat down, and she started the conversation by saying, "Can you tell me about your journey to discover yourself?" It was subconscious in the moment, but I took note of her choice of words. English was her third language. I knew she chose her words very carefully. And before I had said a single word, She was acknowledging that I was on a journey of self-discovery. So I gave her a very quick explanation of basically everything I've said so far. I said I've always leaned masculine, I've always seen myself as a boy or wanted to be a boy, and I told her about the spiritual revelation I had where I felt God's presence overwhelming me. Faye was very quiet and let me go on without asking a lot of questions, and when I was done, she said, "I'm so glad that you're going where God wants you to go." Then she told me that she herself has heard God say things that made her feel confused and scared in the context of the war in Ukraine. But when she's confused and scared, she trusts what she hears. And when she trusts, she feels God's love descend on her and fill her with peace. I expressed that that's exactly how I felt. I couldn't believe that a cis, straight woman seemed to have such a clear understanding of what I was going through spiritually, but I don't believe that's a coincidence. Paul says that the Holy Spirit is a spirit of unity, and everyone with the Spirit is a metaphorical part of Christ's body. And I believe that means we can empathize with other Christians in ways that go beyond normal human capacity. On one of my first nights at MC, I was approached by a person I'd never seen before. At first glance, their gender was ambiguous to me. Actually, they looked a lot like me. They had white skin, straight brown hair, and a smaller stature. They said hello, and I said hello back. Then they said, "Hey, we have the same pronouns." And I looked at their name tag, and it said Connor. He, him. And so, it was at Christian Mission Camp, of all places, that I met a trans man for the very first time. It was in this way that I realized how much of my self-transphobia was founded on social pressure. I was subconsciously thinking, well, if being trans was the right thing to do, then surely there'd be other trans Christians, right? And there weren't any. So I assumed that all Christians in the world had just decided one day that being trans was wrong. But that was not the case. There was a division in ideology among the Christian world. Some believe that being trans was a violation of God's creation. Some believed it was a beautiful expression of worship and self-love and love to other people. And so at the end of the day, it came down to me. What do I believe? Not affected by any social pressure one way or the other. What do I actually believe? Between me and God alone. So when I was alone and I meditated, when it was just me and God, he told me he loved me, and that was all I could hear. And when I felt that love, it made me want to take care of myself. And transitioning, whether it be socially or medically or both or whatever way you go about it, is how I take care of myself. It is the way to make me more connected to my body and therefore more connected with God. That was my answer. After this, I had the opportunity to have a small group of elders pray over me. And when they prayed, they said, "Lord Jesus, watch over Mackenzie. Guide him and show him the way you want him to go. We thank you and praise you for your unconditional love for him." Now, you may say they were just doing that to keep the peace while internally not supporting my decision. And if that's truly the case, I literally don't care. First of all, that moment was about God. It wasn't about them, and it wasn't about me. But even so, it was an extra boost of confidence for me. It was the first, and I believe the only time since then, I've heard someone talk to God about me gendering me correctly. And that made me very, very happy. As I'm writing this section, it is February 7th, 2026. Unfortunately, the most recent developments in my gender journey are not very positive ones. In the fall, I came out to other family members who did not take it very well at all, to say the least. After that, I went several months without seeing Ollie, Aiden, Cook, and even my boyfriend, who I just started dating at the end of the summer. My dysphoria around the new year spiked, and I had the worst attack of gender dysphoria I've ever had in my life. The new year encouraged me to reflect on the year of 2025, and what I found was that my personal self-confidence was horrendously disproportionate to social acknowledgement or acceptance. So, in other words, my self-confidence was higher than it had ever been before, but my social life was literally at its worst it had ever been. I hadn't seen any of my friends at all. More than half of them didn't even want me to transition anyway. I was working a full-day job and didn't have friends at work. My family wasn't gendering me correctly. Most of them weren't acknowledging that anything about me had changed, even mentally or spiritually. Socially, no progress was being made, and that progress was actually being lost. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt lonely. Then on top of that, I started having inklings of physical dysphoria, which was new for me, about my voice, about my face. All of that caused me to have several meltdowns over the course of the 2 weeks surrounding the new year of 2026. My lifeline during these difficult times has been a new person in my life, and that is my first boyfriend. He has been by far the most accepting and supporting and affirming person in my daily life since I graduated high school. He's still learning along with me what being trans means and what it feels like, but he has a sense of empathy that, like, no one else does. He isn't trans, he knows he doesn't understand what it feels like, but he just cares anyway. And he's there to remind me that I have made some social progress in the form of becoming the gay man that had always lurked in the back of my mind. That man that had always been me. This is not where the story ends, but this is, I guess, where my discovery phase ends. I am no longer confused or uncertain or scared. Well, I'm still a little scared, I'm not gonna lie. But unlike before, now I have a destination in mind. Now I just need to get there. I want to express my trans joy and share that with others who need to hear it. I want to tell other trans people who grew up Christian like me that they don't have to decide between loving God and loving themselves. God is on your side. And no, that doesn't mean that anything is acceptable. It doesn't mean that sin isn't real. It doesn't mean that the devil isn't bad or that we shouldn't be fighting our spiritual war. But being your authentic self is not a sin. Okay? God already knows who he created you to be, and he wants you to work to find it. Because that process of that work is what brings you to God. And that's what makes it so worth it. I love Jesus. He gives me so much joy. And more than anything else, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that God is the God of joy, including trans joy. Gender euphoria is a blessing from God, and there's absolutely no shame in thanking him for giving you your moment of joy. And he wants you to have that. He's rooting for you. He wants to be with you when you get your first T-shot. He wants to celebrate with you when your voice changes or when you grow your first facial hair. He wants to be there when you see your new chest for the first time, or whatever trans joy looks like for you. That is God's vision for your life, and he wants to be part of it. Let him be part of that. You're probably waiting for me to say, all you have to do is this, because it's always a bargain, right? Nothing is for free. Well, guess what? This is for free. There's no price to pay. There's no conditions. Like, I hear people say all the time that Christ's love is unconditional, but they literally don't even know what that means. We don't know what that means. We can't understand it. You don't understand how unconditional God's love is. It is... Jesus died so that there don't have to be conditions. Don't make conditions for yourself. Literally, all you have to do is want it. That's it. When I decided one day that I wanted it, and I dug into the Bible to look for it, and I looked for God, my life changed, and it's far more amazing than I ever knew possible.